Welcome to Book 2 in the Horrors and Hoagies series. Tortured Souls. In this, we will cover Chapter 16. We encourage you to immerse yourself in the exciting events that unfold. From thrilling action scenes to heart-pumping moments of suspense, Tortured Souls is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. We appreciate your support and hope that you continue to enjoy the journey we have in store for you. Chapter 16, Taking Trinkets.
Claws swung open the door, allowing Siddiqui to slip inside. They exchanged nods before Claws returned to his post by the door while Siddiqui ascended the stairs to the ritual chamber. The building was empty, without a person in sight. The eerie silence emphasized the destruction that had occurred overnight. Debris on the floor and torn walls created an unsettling atmosphere as a gentle breeze meandered through the rooms. Suddenly, a faint metallic tapping caught Siddiqui's attention. Being familiar with antiques, he immediately recognized the distinct sound of a high-quality telegraph. With only Claws downstairs, he assumed that the burly man was communicating with his colleagues. The ritual room on the second floor was a disaster. Although someone had attempted to clean it, still looked like a tornado had hit the place. The silk coverings were tattered and torn, and various trinkets and jewels scattered over the floor. The room had a strong aroma of exotic spices.
"This is perfect,"
he thought, rubbing his hands excitedly. The chaos in the room would make it easy for him to steal a few items without anyone noticing. He felt a twinge of guilt, but he quickly pushed it aside. He planned to return everything as soon as possible. He carefully selected some jewelry and stashed it in his pockets before returning to the landing. He hurried to get to the pawn shop and sell his loot. As he rushed out of the room, he stumbled over a small cat statue and fell face first onto the ritual stone. As he writhed in pain, his surroundings transformed into a dazzling array of stars. Frustrated by his clumsiness, he impulsively grabbed the cat statue of Bast and used it to strike the pedestal that had caused his injury. Unfortunately, his wild swing missed the stone pedestal and hit the ritual stone, causing a chunk to break off its lower edge. When he regained his senses, he realized the consequences of his actions. The final line of hieroglyphs had severed from the ancient text. Siddiqui felt a surge of panic. He intended to borrow a few items, not to desecrate the place. He knew replacing the last line of the script without anyone noticing was impossible. However, he found the broken piece of rock fit in quite naturally. With the spacing of the hieroglyphics and the clean break caused by the statue, it almost seemed like the last line never existed. He quickly got up, hastily tucked the broken stone fragment into his pants, and hurried back towards the stairs. The front door swung open as he descended the stairs towards the entrance hall. There was no place to hide as Claws opened the door. His pharaoh emerged, accompanied by his followers and probably that annoying Max trailing behind. His attention turned to something else that bothered him. The telegraph had disappeared. Was Claws trying to keep his messages hidden from the pharaoh? Despite the distraction, he quickly made his decision. He pressed himself against the stairwell wall, creating a narrow space for people to pass by. He forced a smile and avoided making eye contact with his master. The steps creaked under their weight as Lukman and his entourage ascended the stairs. Each man brushed against Siddiqui's waistline as they squeezed past him. As Siddiqui watched his pharaoh pass by, he saw an opportunity to avoid embarking on his secretive mission. He mustered the courage to speak, addressing the pharaoh as the
pharaoh apparent.
However, Lukman completely ignored him, preoccupied with examining his clean nails. Undeterred, Siddiqui attempted to push forward, hoping to discuss compensation for his financial investment in the pharaoh's arrival. The stutter that accompanied Siddiqui's words was even more pronounced than usual. Speaking to a living god was already nerve-wracking, but the fact that Lukman was known for his wrath and carried stolen goods from Siddiqui's collection made him even more anxious. Suddenly, Lukman's rage erupted as he turned on Siddiqui, causing his entire procession to halt. With a glare, Lukman confronted the impudent servant, questioning his audacity to make demands. The words dripped with malice, leaving Siddiqui speechless and causing him to avert his gaze while vigorously shaking his head. Luqman allowed a tense silence to hang in the air before delivering a chilling ultimatum. If Siddiqui dared to mention the matter again, he would be shot. With that proclamation, Luqman dismissed Siddiqui as a worthless slave, declaring that he had no use for him or his foolishness. Without another word, Luqman resumed his ascent. Max, the last to pass, briefly patted Siddiqui on the arm. The gesture was as cold and menacing as Luqman's glare, leaving no doubt in Siddiqui's mind that the German would take pleasure in ending his life. After finding himself alone on the staircase again, he took a deep breath before descending to the landing and exiting the building. Claus observed his departure with keen interest. Once outside, he quickened his pace towards his destination. His determination grew stronger, and loyalty pushed to its limit with each step. He realized that no pharaoh was worth the immense suffering he had endured. Although his family would brand him a traitor and a failure for entertaining such thoughts, he no longer cared. In an act of rebellion, he defiantly pulled out the torn piece of hieroglyphic. Fueled by anger, he hurled it with all his might, relishing the sight of it shattering into countless fragments on the distant pavement. Luqman did not deserve the sacrifices made in his name. Siddiqui would sell the items and consider the proceeds compensation for his immeasurable losses. It marked the end of it all, the end of his servitude to an abusive, self-centered villain who would rather see him dead than show concern for his well-being. Caruso's Antiques, located in the Central District, was a charming store. Siddiqui had collaborated with Lemmy Caruso on multiple occasions and admired his discreet and trustworthy nature. However, behind this facade, Caruso had a secret hobby of illegal gunsmithing. It allowed him to make a living while deceiving unsuspecting customers with cheap and counterfeit items. Their meeting occurred in a secure booth at the rear of Caruso's shop, reinforced and barred for added protection. Siddiqui had already presented the artifacts on the counter, showcasing his expertise in determining their value to the pawnbroker. Caruso, a typical professional, engaged in tough and unscrupulous negotiations. Siddiqui was a skilled negotiator, dealing with more difficult people in the past. He knew the value of his loot was much lower than what he was asking for, but he kept that secret. After finishing the deal, Lemmy was surprised at how smoothly it went and asked if Siddiqui was feeling all right. Siddiqui simply replied that it pays to be nice to those you work with, but he'll drive a harder bargain next time. Lemmy gave Siddiqui a 7-day hold on the goods before putting them up for sale, with only a 10% markup if Siddiqui wanted them back. Siddiqui played it cool, pretending he was only there to catch up with an old friend and would probably forget the whole thing. Lemmy was happy to have the merchandise without any strings attached. Lemmy dropped a wad of cash onto the counter, enticing Siddiqui to snatch it. It wasn't much for the trade, but Siddiqui couldn't help but notice it was more than they had agreed upon. These gestures spoke volumes in their unspoken trade language. It served as an additional payment to ensure Siddiqui wouldn't return for the items. With a grin, Siddiqui swiftly pocketed the money and expressed his gratitude to Lemmy as he approached the exit. However, his steps halted when he saw a beautiful ring on a ring sizer. It was the perfect size. Taking the ring from the sizer, Siddiqui showcased it to Lemmy for his approval. The man nodded and motioned for the hefty scoundrel to leave before he could snatch anything else from his inventory. Susie flashed her captivating smile at Siddiqui, who reciprocated with equal warmth. Her cheeks flushed, even with her flawless makeup. It was pure bliss. With a satisfied belly and the company of his most cherished person, Siddiqui was content. His life felt whole, and the burden that had weighed him down seemed to vanish. As Susie whisked away his empty plates, Siddiqui seized the opportunity to exit. But before he left, he discreetly slipped several tens under his plate, a tip that likely exceeded a month's wage. As Siddiqui crossed the parking lot, the diner's front door suddenly swung open. He turned to see Susie standing there, illuminated by the sun. Seeing her outside the diner was strange, but she looked more beautiful in the natural light. His heart skipped a beat as he found himself face to face with her again. Susie, on the other hand, seemed less affected by the encounter. She pushed the tip back towards him, insisting it was too much. Her face was a mix of confusion, worry, and agitation. Siddiqui continued to smile, grateful for Susie's kindness and generosity. He explained that she had saved him in more ways than she could ever know and that he wouldn't have been able to give her it if it weren't for her. He took her hand and gently pushed the money towards her, but she stepped back and turned away, claiming she didn't know him. Siddiqui acknowledged.
Acts of kindness towards strangers without expecting anything in return reflect a beautiful soul.
Susie stumbled.
This is overwhelming. It feels like a bribe rather than a gift for someone like me.
His smile faltered, but he regained his composure and replied, "If you perceive it as a bribe, what would I be bribing you for?"
His heart was racing as he ventured into uncharted territory. In frustration, she flailed her arms and blurted out, "I don't know, I'm not attractive enough to be taken home. I'm not a catch, I don't like being controlled by anyone." Siddiqui replied,
"If you think the tip is too much money, why not buy something nice to wear? When I return, you can let me know when we can visit the museum together. I'll give you a tour of their new exhibits."
She turned around and gave him a stern look.
Are you asking me on a date? I'm not some easy girl, you know. Plus, I'm a divorced mom with a kid.
Undeterred, Siddiqui persisted.
"Bring them along. The museum has so much for children to explore. No strings attached, no expectations. Merely some quality time and good company."
Her stern expression softened, if only slightly. She liked this guy, but understanding men had never been her strong suit. Despite his appearance and awkwardness, she sensed he was a genuinely good person.
What the heck?
She thought. A smile crept back onto her face.
All right. But I need to know your name if I mention you to Charlotte.
He felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him, instantly shattering his confidence. Throughout the year they had known each other, their interactions had always been professional. He had wanted to confess his feelings many times, but the combination of distance and cowardice prevented him. He had taken his chance and failed. Any hopes of a blossoming friendship or, dare he think, a romance, vanished. However, he had managed to lighten her load a little, and finally, he gathered the courage to give her what she had asked for.
"In defeat,"
he muttered,
"my name is Siddiqui Ams."
Susie took a step closer and gently placed her hand on his cheek.
Thank you, honey. My child and I will wait for you when I finish my shift tomorrow.
Siddiqui's heart raced in his chest. He stood tall and proud as he nodded. They bid each other farewell and went their separate ways, filled with hopeful dreams.